Добрый всем вечер. Очень рад вас видеть. Я Антон Яхонтов, Патрик Каха, куратор программы под названием «Галерея плавающего звука». «Галерея плавающего звука» — этот проект, который начался еще в очень допотопные времена, до пространственно-звучные времена в Москве, по-моему, году 8. Вот, и флоутинг, потому что плавающая галерея, потому что у нас очень долго, собственно говоря, был формат фри-флоутинг, но до тех пор, пока вот мы не пришвартовались действительно на берегах Фонтанки здесь. В 2013 году это произошло. И галерея в основном посвящена такой теории как бы и практике даже, как актофония. То есть существует такой формат, когда вокруг вас стоит 8 одинаковых колонок, вот, в ровном круге, и, собственно, есть несколько сотен, уже, наверное, тысяч даже все вместе, если в мире, композиторов, саунд-артистов, саунд-дизайнеров, которые работают именно с таким форматом, который стал где-то с 80-х годов, ну, в общем, технически возможен. И таким образом вот он родился как бы сам в ходе техно-культурной эволюции, и его очень многие любят. Естественно, что, ну, как бы заинтересовавшись им в свое время, проблема была в том, что негде было ни писать, не играть такие вещи. И вот так появилась галерея. Мы также запустили с 2018 года другой наш пространственно-музыкальный проект, о котором мы тоже давно мечтали, это «Акусмониум». Я думаю, об этом вы уже в основном в курсе. Вот эта система, не родившаяся сама по себе в процессе эволюции, а у нее, наоборот, есть автор, это Франсуа Бейли. В 2018 году он у нас был, и это система, изобретенная в группе музыкальных исследований, основанная учителем Бейли, Пьером Шефером. Акусмониум — это второй формат, который мы, как бы инаугурировали, это назвал Жан-Клод Элуа, тоже грандмастер амбиента, который у нас здесь открывал. Вот. Но сегодня мы бы хотели инаугурировать еще один формат, и вот у нас как раз есть Пол и Иван Сапожков. Иван, ты выходи уже. Дело в том, что систем, стерео, да, этот формат равен системе. То есть, две колонки — это и есть сетап для создания и прослушивания. А вот что касается пространственной, то здесь нету одного сетапа. То есть их, в принципе, бесконечно много, с одной стороны. Но если посмотреть, во-первых, сколько из них реализовано, то есть большинство из них просто не реализуется никогда. Эта тема продолжает где-то там ресерчиться до бесконечности в лабораториях и на свет не выходит. Вот, по разным причинам. Вот. Я думаю, люди, связанные с ресерчем, понимают, что в основном, если ты как бы грант уже освоил, у тебя все вышло, то это скорее плохо, а не хорошо. То есть надо, чтобы оно не закончилось, скорее уж тогда. И по этим причинам многие системы, которые я видел, они иногда очень прекрасны. Они не доходят до нас с вами. Вот. И также из многих из них, те, которые таки доходят, они как бы существуют в каком-то единичном формате, и по поводу перформанса или где-то в театре, или в студии, или там, я не знаю, в концертном пространстве. Соответственно, как бы, опять же таки, ни у кого, кроме этих счастливцев, их испытать, как бы, шансов нет. Даже если вы там раз поработали, то если вы захотите это продолжать, то, собственно, как бы, что вы будете делать? В этом смысле я, стараюсь аккумулировать именно системы, которые хороши не только для какого-то одного человека, который, к тому же, не мы, но и для более-менее всех. То есть все могут прийти и поучиться у нас на Акусмоне, все могут так или иначе заинтересованные люди прийти послушать и прийти поработать на актофонии. И вот, приходя к этому, я был очень рад наконец-то познакомиться с Полом, побывать вот в том пространстве замечательном, где он сидит, о чем он сейчас расскажет. Потому что это тоже, во-первых, система гениальная, на мой взгляд, во-вторых, доведенная до реализации, и в-третьих, в общем-то, доступная. То есть вот он сейчас сидит в Будапеште, и там, в общем, работают артисты, проходят выставки. И вот у нас Иван Сапожков с недавних пор, адепт тоже этой системы.
5 лет это недавних, наверное, или с давних, я уж не знаю, 6.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Oomen, the mastermind of 4DSOUND and the Spatial Sound Institute in Budapest. Is that right, Paul?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, Paul, what is 4DSOUND? Like, the main idea, the main concept behind
What is 4D sound? So it comes from, let's say, a desire from which was living deep inside me as a musician composer to, let's say, to unleash some energy that is, let's say, it's hidden within sound, but very often it doesn't reveal itself. You know, especially when we're listening to sound over speakers. There's this suggestion of a space. You know, you want to be in the space. You want to feel the warmth and the depth of, let's say, presences in that space, sound sources, and you want to feel, let's say, the depth of your own presence in relation to those sound sources. And from my work as a composer and working in the theater also as a composer a lot, this notion of presence, of real physical presence of the sound in the space, this was highly important for me and kind of the core of experience I was looking for. And very often I wasn't able to realize it. And I came to realize that this is because for me, it's the speaker as an object which is actually in the way. So the speaker itself has its own presence and its own, you know, character and reality, which makes that the sound you're trying to represent is rather modulating the character of the speaker than that the speaker represents the sound in itself. And by trying out different approaches to, let's say, multi-channel inhalation, I felt that the problem wasn't solved. I was just actually multiplying the problem. So if I would have 40 speakers in a room, I would have 40 presences, but they wouldn't create this, let's say, this naturalness or this balance, this coherence with the room. So let's say 4D sound comes from the for me it means to be able to identify with the presence of sound in a room without the loudspeaker being in the way.
Because I mean, briefly, like before, I was talking also about the acousmonium theory and practice. So that's also, I mean, have you tried it and you felt yourself unsatisfied after?
No, I've never worked specifically with an acousmonium, and I think the acousmonium is an interesting, almost like on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah, totally.
Both of them are dealing with spatial sound, because so the acousmonium comes more from a let's say a direction of thinking where the speaker itself is the object that is exhibited, let's say, and this is also very interesting. But this was not what I was looking for. So I never worked specifically with acousmoniums, but I did work with a lot of other loudspeaker systems, wave field synthesis systems. I worked with let's say self-installed PA systems driven by surround sound or quadraphonic or optophonic sound. And as I said, I felt the speaker was a limiting factor in let's say a real virtual presence of the sound. So the development of 4D sound then was a big endeavor, because I realized it is both to do with the approach, how we approach sound from a compositional point of view, and how can we understand space from a compositional point of view. And at the same time, there is real hardware there's like hard problems to solve, meaning you need certain hardware driven in a particular way, engineered in a particular way to sort of overcome this problem that I was experiencing.
That brings us to the next very important question. Could you please elaborate, guys, on the hardware? You know, on what's specific about the speakers and the positioning, the equilibrium of those speakers in the space.
Yes. So you see actually one speaker here behind me, and you'll be surrounded by a number of those speakers right now in the room. I can maybe bring the camera a bit closer so you can have a better look. Yes, like this. So this loudspeaker, it took me a couple of years of experimenting with different self-built loudspeakers that I tried to make to be fully omnidirectional. And we were kind of halfway of sort of establishing our own model. And then I met another engineer in the Netherlands. His name is Leo de Klerk. who already actually invented this speaker, and it was much better than anything that we had done up until that time. So I adopted this as a component, let's say, for the whole 4D sound concept. So as you can see, this loudspeaker is, it's a sort of elliptical, conical loudspeaker. It's fully round, and it's a bit hard to see, but it has a convex loudspeaker driver, which is different from normal loudspeakers, which is concave. So it's a modified loudspeaker, and this was Leo's invention basically, which made it possible to have fully omnidirectional sound across the entire frequency range. So in that sense, this loudspeaker is different from other omnidirectional loudspeakers, which, for instance, work with the diffuser, which diffuses, some part of the frequency spectrum, but never the full frequency spectrum omnidirectionally. So the character then that this speaker has, because of the omnidirectionality, is that it's extremely neutral. And because the energy is very equally distributed across the room, it also, for instance, works very easily with the acoustics, doesn't create, let's say, unequal reflections in an environment, and it becomes very easy to map multiple of those speakers together without any phase problems or the necessity to correct, for instance, the timing of speakers. So as you can see here, this is the studio in Budapest. You see that there's a number of loudspeakers here in a row. Here there's another row.
How many speakers are there altogether in total?
Here above. Altogether here we have 36 of these loudspeakers installed in like an equal horizontal and vertical grid.
Okay.
And they extend here towards the floor.
It's a beautiful floor.
Here you see
Acoustically
3 meters
transparent.
below the floor, you see here some subwoofers.
Nice.
And then here are other speakers. So they keep on. Yeah, it's hard to see. It's a bit dark here, but so this floor keeps on going as well. So it's literally like a whole grid of these loudspeakers, which is installed throughout the room. And as I said, so they work together in, let's say, to create a 3-dimensional sort of sound screen, which is very transparent in character. So it allows you to, let's say, then project sounds onto that large screen, which feels sort of very naturally present in the space without the loudspeaker itself being very present, which means that you can kind of forget about the loudspeaker, and you're rather, instead of the loudspeaker pointing direction at itself, it points the attention towards the space around you.
Great. And the space you are here right now in, and what you show, this is the Spatial Sound Institute, right?
Yes, so this is the Spatial Sound Institute in Budapest. It's now 6 years ago that we established this studio, and it came from, let's say, the first years of exploring 4D sound. We got many artists who started to do experiments on the system or produce shows, and it was very difficult because it's literally like a new medium where you have to kind of relearn how do you mix sound, and everything works totally different than you're used to. And then we would, for instance, work with a famous artist, and we would have like 1 week to produce a 2-hour show. And from day one, like the artist is like, oh, I need much more time, and there's never enough time. So because of this, after a few years, we and also because there was more and more like requests to us to do very exotic projects, people with crazy
Like
ideas.
give us an example or two. What do you mean the exotic project?
Well, an exotic project could, for a professor from Cambridge coming to us saying, I would like to use your system to explore how we can map the human bio into sound. So she would, for instance, do an acupuncture practice and then translate the rhythms that she feels in the human body into a spatial sort of landscape, which the person can then sit inside himself. Oh, that's like, okay, going very far out, right? That's not regular music practice. But I have lots of examples like that. And so the Spatial Sound Institute was established with this idea in mind, like we need to create a space for, you know, creation and inspiration around this new medium of spatial sound, and create a sort of safe place where people can explore, and we can give the space for, you know, longer periods also. So not just sort of short, intensive productions, and more research oriented, less performance oriented.
And this is how you got to know each other with Ivan, as I understand, right? So that was your resident at some point.
That's right. So that's right. So Ivan was among the residents in, I think, the first or the second season in Budapest. I think it was 2017. And Ivan was one of those people who had a very exotic idea. So he wrote a proposal to us, saying that he has insight into the fourth dimension and would like to create a hyperspace with the 4D sound system. And so we would review this with our board, and we would say, well, interesting, don't really understand it, but this sounds
yet another
intriguing.
exotic guy
so
here around with a...
So Ivan came to do the residency, and, you know, kind of starting from scratch. And Ivan was actually one of the people who actually had a long period of time. So he worked for 6 months at the institute. He lived, and so at the institute also the artists live here for the period that they work. Yeah, so they come here for, let's say, a month or sometimes a few months. Ivan was here for 6 months, so he lived at the institute. And well, he can say a few more things about how this process was for him. But he literally sort of came to embody the whole process with the system. So Ivan, you should say something about your memories of that time.
Okay, then yeah, a bit of my story. Then around, like, I had a kind of idea from 2010, and about that, how I can use the four-dimensional mathematics, or if mathematically fourth dimension exists, how we can implement this to music or to sound, or how we can create it. And I decided, okay, this is impossible, and I forgot about that idea. And at some time, I found the 4D sound advertising in YouTube, and my impression was, oh, they already doing this or not? And I began to research about 4D sound, sending a lot of emails, trying to reach the guys, trying to reach the studio. And when I understood that, okay, this is the system which can, sound system and technology which can produce 3D, let's say, holograms, because it's using virtual reality, and virtual reality projecting onto the speaker's matrix, so you can use the space, and then I found the connection between that idea and the technology. And after I send ideas to Paul, and Paul invites me for this long residency. But one of the purposes was also to make the long residency, because I also understood that this is a new medium and I need a lot of time, and this is a really good chance to learn it, to dive really, really deep into this concept. And then after we began to, so it began kind of collaboration between us, and the 4DSOUND. Paul Casimir was like we discussed a lot, and we created this like we created discussed arguments, experimented a lot on this, and then also I tried to play with this. So at first we created an instrument which allows to create the 3D projections of four-dimensional objects, and then I began to work with the expressive tools, with the space, how to make it, and so in the end we kind of created hyperspace instrument to project it.
And this is what I also wanted to ask about, because the hyperspace instrument, this is that's the second part, as I understand. It's the software part. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Then software part that was created unique shapes, 4D shape synth, which generates the forms.
So is it the only proper application that is to be used with the 4DSOUND, or maybe it's also a question to Paul? Can it be some other applications, kind of interfaces, or you really prefer one and only, or how is that?
It's working with 4DSOUND engine.
Yeah, so there's a few layers. So part of the residency programs that many artists and researchers that they would make their own type of tools. So indeed, the interface to the system can be very varied, and it's very easy to access through a protocol called OSC, Open Sound Control. So we have a practice here of artists creating their own interfaces to connect to the system. And so there's two layers. One layer is the 4DSOUND engine, which is the actual software that processes the sounds, let's say input sounds, so different layers of audio that are then mapped to virtual space. And the 4D engine takes care of then how the energy of those sounds and the content of those sounds distributed across the different speakers. So that's the 4DSOUND part of the software. And then there is interfaces, which it can be controlled in a more traditional way, let's say from a digital audio workstation. We usually use Ableton Live to, for people to make arrangements and to control different spatial parameters. But as I said, there is the ability to create all kinds of, write different programs to make very specific movements or actions and send this data to the 4D engine. So Ivan, he for his piece, he wanted to develop actual 4D, 4-dimensional geometric shapes that could be rotated and morphed, not just in 3, but in 4 dimensions. So one of the programmers of 4DSOUND, Casimir Geelhoed, he was also part of this residency, and he assisted Ivan in developing a special tool, which included, I don't remember how many, a number of special geometrical shapes ranging from point to simple 2D shapes like triangle and square, to 3D shapes, to 4D shapes. And so this was a special tool really designed based on Ivan's ideas and wishes, and which was then his instrument, which he explored how to play the 4DSOUND system.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, and second part was artistic part, when I kind of get some level of, let's say, mastership. After 3 months, I became to really improvising freely with that instrument, and then we recorded the 9 parts and created the program. So it's
cool.
Can I throw hey, really great to see you guys. But can I throw a real quick question? When you start, the 4DSOUND software already was fully developed, the one that we see in Manom or something. It's more the question, not to Paul.
To Ivan.
Yeah, to Ivan, because Ivan, as I understand, correct, that you used the other interface for the system.
No. It's the same.
one?
It's the same.
Oh, the same one
It's the
with
same.
the shapes and yeah.
It's 4D Sound software. And the system, the same system, but another setup. But I have.
Because I acquired with the
but I have a special module, let's say app, which is sending additional information from about four-dimensional objects and their movements, morphing and everything. It's just and by the way, in new software which 4D Sound developing now, it becomes a part of new software. Yes, that was like, I think, yes, Paul, as I understand.
Yes, of course. The software is. The hardware is also still in development, meaning there's still, of course, refinements that, let's say, new speaker updates are coming out. But this is a very slow process. The software development is something that goes faster with more dynamics, and the residency program in general is really good in accelerating that. So almost every residency brings a different approach to the software. So tools, they tend to sort of follow interesting ideas that come up during those residencies. So for instance, Ivan's project, among a few other projects, was very informative to us and to our technical team on how, for instance, objects could be represented with, let's say, particle structures. And so in Ivan's case, the amount of particles were quite low, let's say a very low resolution, but with very particular geometrical relationships, which were really exploited in his piece. In the current line of the software, we work with sort of very high-level concepts and higher complexities of point grids or sort of point clouds, which represent virtual objects. So, the kind of work that Ivan did back in 2017 was hugely informative for that further development of the software, kind of where it is today.
Игорь, интересно, сколько здесь звукового оборудования, самих динамиков?
A question to Ivan: how many speakers are here in this very room?
Здесь 8 спикеров. Они расположены в виде куба. Но это минимальная конфигурация 4D Sound, которая минимальная. Вообще, в принципе, сама система строится также кубами. То есть здесь 2 уровня, их может быть 3, и, соответственно, может быть больше рядов. Соответственно, мы получим более детализированное движение, но в данном, еще раз скажу, что 4D Sound это не про спикеры, это меньше всего про спикеры, меньше всего про, это скорее про пространство, а спикеры это матрица, то есть это минимальная матрица, как используем.
Еще вопросы?
Hello, Paul. I think my question is to you. As far as I know, there is no such a thing as an acoustic feeling of the height of the sound, right? There is no up for the sound. There is further, left, right that we can do. And so in Manon, as I heard, it's just about the number of speakers in a stack, yeah? How did you get rid of this problem that there is no acoustic sound coming from the app?
No, I completely disagree. I think I've even have instances where even without actually placing loudspeakers, let's say on a vertical axis, but just having one set of loudspeakers, let's say at a particular height, with the right processing on the sound itself, you can have very convincing effects that the sound is actually moving down, even down through the floor or up through the ceiling. In fact, I've demonstrated this very phenomena with a mono sound system at the electronic studio in Belgrade, at the Radio Belgrade, where I did this experiment with 10 people in a small studio, and the manipulations were purely on were directly processing the waves on a mono system, and everybody was hearing the sound going straight through the floor and going high up. So first of all, we have very strong sense also of vertically detecting the sound. And if you appeal to that sense in the right way, then you will hear images which are up and down. So having loudspeakers, let's say, below you and above you helps to be able to translate that. But in the end, it's all in the perception. So if you can access the perception in the right way, you will hear up and down, regardless where the loudspeaker is.
Я немножечко, возможно, не поняла. То есть, правильно ли я понимаю, что в пространстве вы создаете предметы геометрические, опираясь на X, Y, Z, и они создают звук? Правильно я поняла?
Да.
Отлично.
Да.
Question was like whether it's correct to understand that what he does with the interfaces, that he creates the geometrical objects, positioning them in the space.
Вы еще не видели.
Yes, says he.
Очень интересно было
Very,
посмотреть, именно
Как четырехмерные работы. Это все было трехмерное.
Добрый вечер.
Это трехмерное?
Да, вот где была визуализация. А четырехмерная, это вы слышали просто запись из студии в Будапеште. Это, но вы не видели визуализации, что там было.
А почему?
Ну, потому что это уже запись, потому что там уже записано. Отдельно я могу показать инструменты, и если будет интересно, тоже я уже воспользуюсь случаем. After our wonderful project in Budapest, I came to Russia and I decided to establish the studio here. То есть я решил сделать студию, и вот мы благодаря Антону, Насте, галерее плавающего звука, мы презентуем сегодня эту систему. И я могу сказать, что я тоже буду рад видеть людей заинтересованных, готовых, может быть, изучать этот инструмент, что-то делать. И так далее. Ну, то есть...
Давайте, последний вопрос, и дальше уже нормально.
Да, распределяется ли как-то по частотным звук-колонках? То есть снизу, низкие?
Ну, у нас есть обы, а остальные они все нейтральные.
Ага, все, понял, спасибо.
So was the question something you, Paul, spoke before about the aspect of loudspeakers being neutral as much as possible? So I answered for you, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, the last one, yeah? Paul.
Yeah, Paul, I'm sorry, just all my questions are to you today. I really appreciate that you and your institution works with the perception of the sound, and you're actually manifesting this 3-unit system, like the signal and the system where it's distributed and the listener who is actually perceiving. And just want to really thank you for that, because this is for me, it's just fresh air, because no one talks actually about the perception. Not really no one, but a few people in a field. And so I would like to ask you, is that correct that your system works with the perception in the same way as with the technical implementation of the idea? Because my previous question about hate of the sound, that was kind of linked with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but yes, you're right that so in the philosophy of the system, there is, let's say, a continuum from from the technical aspects to the creative aspects to the actual listening experience, which would say is central. And I may not have said this before, but one of the very important points of the original 4D sound system as we designed it was also that the listener, the perceiver, kind of directs its own narrative in the space by not sitting in one place like you are doing right now, but by actually being free to move through the space. Yeah, so I show you once more the space here of the studio. So it's a pretty large space, right? And there's no chairs, but you can imagine sort of wandering through this space, and you can relate to the sound images that are all around you. So you can also walk closer to sounds, walk further away from them, and kind of this dynamic that you get as a listener with the space, that is actually the fourth dimension. You know, because you let's say create your own reality, your own consciousness within the space. And again, to be able to do that, the idea is that the speakers are not in the way, but that you feel kind of that you can explore free space without that there is a certain sweet spot or a place where the sound is the best. No, it's rather the sound is different everywhere in space, and you can explore it by yourself in your own time. So I hope that maybe with the next presentation in Petersburg, where Ivan presents it's the full scope of his work, that the audience would also be able to move around. And it's true that this is a quite minimal setup he has there, so it's probably in this case better to sit. But if it's installed with more speakers, it becomes definitely interesting to transverse the space and create your own experience by how you move and behave.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks a lot for this, for being with us tonight. Thanks for your time. I would say, yeah, let's call it a day, and we are really looking forward for you to come here at some point, and make a live appearance and live talks.
Me too.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Bye.
Thank you very much.